Why are there so many shows starring Muppets and dozens of movies too? They said they'd watch everyone and they mean it. It's something that they've got to do. So now they've pledged you a lifelong commitment. The Muppets, Matthew and Sam.
Welcome to Commitment, the podcast where two friends have vowed to watch all things Muppets. I'm Matthew Gatos. And this is Sam Schultz, who decided to take a drink of bubbly water at the exact moment I started introducing him.
I'm sorry. I'm unprofessional. Hi, I'm Sam.
And this week we watched a couple of things that aired just within a couple weeks of each other. We watched an entire 90-minute episode of The Dick Cavett Show from Thanksgiving Day 1971, as well as another appearance of the Muppets on The Flip Wilson Show from November 11th, 1971. And this is gonna wrap up 1971 for us. We did it. We made it through another year.
There was a lot in 1971, huh?
Yeah, 1971 was a pretty busy time. We had the To Tell the Truth. We had the appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show, Pure Goldie, The Frog Prince. This is definitely the era of like variety show, TV appearances, and then occasionally a fairy tale thing is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the Muppets don't do a ton from like 72 up through like basically the Muppet Show. Like we get a few things that are happening and some pilots are happening, but we're about to enter a weird era where the biggest thing they do in the next few years is start appearing on Saturday Night Live.
That feels similar to the era that we are in now, where they just kind of pop up every now and then.
Yeah, and I think to me, as we were watching through these, it sort of felt like we were working towards the Muppet Show faster. And I guess this Dick Cavett Show appearance that we're going to talk about feels like that because I'm like, oh, this feels like the Muppets are super prevalent in society at this point, that like they are featured on an entire episode of the show. But the fact that they like just go back to doing this same sort of variety show kind of thing, like they're definitely the side act for everybody else.
And I guess you can't forget Sesame Street also.
Right. At this point, Sesame Street is very, very popular. Like during this same time period, Sesame Street Season 3 is starting to air. It started on November 8th, 1971. And this is also the year I found out this is when they started making Sesame Street toys. So the first couple seasons, they just didn't have any official toys or anything. And so this was when they officially started that, which was like amazingly successful right out the gate.
He has a Big Bird doll at one point.
Yeah, and I think these were new.
Right.
And this is also when Luis and Maria and Mr. Snuffleupagus all joined the cast in season 3. So it's starting to solidify a little bit more. There was some other things that were also sort of happening with the Muppets that either we couldn't watch, either there isn't footage that exists, or it isn't out there on the internet that I could track down, but I feel like some of them are important to talk about. We had the Pierre Burton Show, which was a talk show in Toronto that Jim Henson went and appeared on in October 1971. And that's important because it's sort of establishing this further connection of Jim Henson going to Canada for all of these Muppet musicians in Bremen and Hey Cinderella and the Frog Prince and all these things that they shot like in Toronto. But then we also have things like the Evening at the Pops, which was the Boston Pops Orchestra. The Sesame Street characters, human and Muppets alike, both appeared there in September 1971. And as usual on this podcast, you can watch that, but you have to go to the Paley Center for Media.
Oh, no. We need to become like fellows at the Paley Media thing.
Yeah, like my first instinct was like, I want to get a job at the Paley Center of Media. And I was like, wait, no, they're not just going to let me sit and watch Muppet stuff all day. I need to get like
sweep the floor or something.
Yeah, I need to be the night janitor at the Paley Center for Media and then just do my job real quick and then go sit and watch hours and hours of Muppets every day.
They're hoarding it, though. It's not fair.
Also, at some point during 1971, they not only did their Vegas show with Nancy Sinatra, but they also filmed a special with Nancy Sinatra that was called Moving with Nancy. And a version of it, at least, that I saw a script cover from said, like, Moving with Nancy in Muppet Land. So it was, like, again, supposed to be, like, a spinoff of this whole Muppet Land series they're doing. But that apparently was filmed and just never released or seen by anyone. Like, Nancy Sinatra just, like, owns it, put it in a vault. No one gets to watch that.
Was it bad or what?
It sounds like that's why you would do that. Like if the Muppets are this popular at this point and you're Nancy Sinatra, why not release that?
It was too good for anyone to see.
Yeah. But another couple things they did at this point, late 1971 in December, there was a interview with Jim Henson on the David Frost show. This is David Frost of Frost-Nixon fame, is probably the most famous thing people know him from, is interviewing Nixon. And last but certainly not least, the thing that they did during this era that we unfortunately could not watch is This Is Tom Jones, which was a weekly variety show that had, I think it was like one of those summer replacement things that went for several weeks over the summer and didn't ever come back. But we will watch things similar to this with like the Pure Goldie and the Julie Andrews specials, where on this Kermit and Rolf appeared. They had Mana Mana and certain things like that. But what's important about this special isn't necessarily what happened on the special, but more behind the scenes. This was Jim Henson's first trip to London, where he's about to like live in a few years, producing the Muppet Show and other things. This was basically like a very pivotal moment, which is like why it's a bummer we can't watch it, because Marty Starger, who was a producer at ABC, saw this special. I believe ABC aired it in the US, and this helped him learn about the Muppets more, which like made him okay with making the pilots later on for the Muppet Show in 1974 and 1975. Another fun fact, Lord Lou Grade, who will go on to be very important to the Muppets, he was a producer on This Is Tom Jones.
What the hell?
And he would go on to eventually...
This is the most important piece of Muppet media of all time.
It does feel very much like that. Even though I don't know that the show itself is anything special to watch, the fact that all this stuff is happening behind the scenes, because Lord Lou Grade goes on to produce The Muppet Show and The Muppet Movie, and is such a huge part of the early Muppet stuff that he is like the character that Orson Welles' character in The Muppet Movie is based on.
I'm just learning that Tom Jones is British right now. I did not know that.
I am also learning that right now as
He's
you
Sir
say those
Tom
words.
Jones.
Wait, I feel like I've seen him talk in things, and for some reason I just thought he was like fancy.
Sir Thomas John Woodward is his real name.
What? Tom Jones is British?
I mean, unless I'm making a horrible mistake. I'm currently on Wikipedia. Tom Jones.
Oh, he's
singer.
Welsh.
Sir Thomas John Woodward, professionally known as Tom Jones.
Tom Jones is Welsh. This is fascinating. I mean, basically all I knew about Tom Jones was based on my watching of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So I can't blame myself too much for not knowing he was Welsh. That didn't really come up on The Fresh Prince.
Does he not talk in Mars Attacks?
He must, but I feel like he has one of those voices where he's just like, "Hi, I'm Tom Jones." Like
Yeah.
he's just very like almost William Shatner-y.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I never would have guessed like, "Oh, listen to that Welsh accent." But I'm sure now knowing that, I'm going to go back and watch clips and be like, "Oh, nope, I'm dumb." Very clearly a Welsh man.
So recently he has been a coach on the British version of The Voice.
I think I've seen a clip from that, but I also didn't put together that like, oh, he must be British.
Maybe British people don't even know it.
Wow. All right. We all learned something today. Maybe we're the only two dum-dums who don't know Tom Jones is not American.
I knew that. I don't know. I think that's forbidden knowledge.
Well, that's why like I even had that thought of like, oh, like why did they film this in London? Like why did they have to go to London to film this Tom Jones special? Oh, it's because he lived there. He was weird. I just picture him as this American 70s man with giant sideburns.
Yeah, he lives in Las Vegas on top of a casino in a penthouse.
Well, the Tom Jones special also gave us apparently some of the production staff that had worked on that show also ended up working on The Muppet Show. And Connie Stevens was also a guest on the Tom Jones special with the Muppets. She did a little number with Kermit and Rolf. And apparently she did so well, like interacting with the Muppets, that's why they chose her to be the first celebrity guest star on The Muppet Show.
What the fuck?
So, like, yeah, you're right. This is the, like, number one most pivotal piece of media that leads to The Muppet Show, aside from, like, the pilots and stuff. But this is, like, the seed for The Muppet Show in so many ways. And we can't watch it.
And a late Rolf appearance, too.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't get many of those anymore.
He was supposed to get one on Dick Cavett, which we'll talk about. And they cut him for time.
Yeah, that's disrespectful.
But, Sam, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the Dick Cavett Show?
So Dick Cavett had a few different talk shows during his career. I think this was like the third iteration of the Dick Cavett Show, and it ran on ABC from 1969 to 1971, and it was created to compete with Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, which Cavett had previously been a writer on. So Dick Cavett Show, of all of the main late night shows, was the thinking man's talk show, and he tended to have on politicians and thinkers and like artists, and he would ask them deep questions and have debates and stuff more than do like goofy stuff. Like the Muppets are goofy, but he also treated them kind of with a reverence, I suppose. And his show is also the least popular of the three major network talk shows, so maybe those two things go hand in hand. But here I learned some weird things about Dick Cavett. His show is just, you can get the gist of it from this one episode. It's a talk show. But some weird things about him. He broke into showbiz by writing a bunch of jokes for Jack Paar when Jack Paar was hosting The Tonight Show. Then he just went to the TV studio where Jack Paar worked, walked around until he found him in a hallway, and handed him the packet of jokes. Jack Paar told the jokes on TV and then was like, "You want to be a writer?" And that was it. That's how he got his job. Basically like going to a puppet convention and meeting Jim Henson. That's just how things happen.
That's like going to a puppet convention and throwing a puppet at Jim Henson and saying, "I made this, hire me."
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, thank you, Don Celine, you're hired."
Yeah. So he also hosted John Kerry and John O'Neill, who John Kerry, I'm sure, but they were two politicians and Vietnam vets.
Oh, I was gonna say like that John Kerry.
That John Kerry.
Okay.
Yeah, who had a debate about the war. John Kerry anti-war, John O'Neill pro-Vietnam War. John Kerry like trounced O'Neill, the pro-war guy, and this made Richard Nixon so mad that there are like 26 different times in the Watergate tapes where Nixon talks about their ongoing effort to ruin Dick Cavett's life.
Wow.
Which I don't think they ever ended up doing, but that was something that
he's
Nixon
still
wanted
pretty
very bad.
well regarded. I don't think they did a good job.
It maybe seemed like something Richard Nixon just kept saying, and all of his aides were like, "Well, we're on it, I guess." And finally, he was in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah, not in a long time.
So there's that part where that girl's watching TV, and she's watching, and she gets her head pulled into the screen, and Freddy says, "Welcome to primetime, bitch." You know that part? So the person who turns into Freddy Krueger, she's watching a late night talk show. That is Dick Cavett talking to Zsa Zsa Gabor. He turns into Freddy Krueger, murders Zsa Zsa Gabor, and then pulls her head through the TV. So that's Dick. He's also in Beetlejuice, apparently.
He plays Delia's agent.
I can't picture it, but I mean, I know which person you're talking about. I just haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah, Dick Cavett for me has always just been one of those people like I am aware of as like a name, like a person that like hosted a show. And I think largely because of Forrest Gump. In Forrest Gump, they have the John Lennon appearance on Dick Cavett show, and they like edit Forrest Gump into that. And so that's like when I pictured like the Dick Cavett set, like I pictured that clip from Forrest Gump first.
Right.
But like when you're talking about how he had these like more in-depth, like chatty interviews with people, I think that's my favorite thing about going back and watching old Dick Cavett shows, which they have like really good extensive collections on YouTube. Like they have a Dick Cavett Show YouTube channel where you can go watch him talk to people like Salvador Dali or Groucho Marx and all these things. And they just like have like the entire hour and a half to just like talk to this person and get to know them, as opposed to like 7-minute talk show segments, which is like a lot of other talk shows.
Speaking of Groucho Marx, he became friends with Groucho Marx because he followed him down the street until Groucho Marx said, "Do you want to go get lunch?" And then they just became friends.
Oh man, little weird Dick Cavett who's just following people around to either become their friend or work for them.
So the 50s and 60s were just different, I suppose. So anyway, on this particular episode, Dick Cavett has Jim and Muppets Inc. on to do pretty much exactly what they did on the Mike Douglas show, but they're now older and wiser, and they have bigger beards, and there's more people on the show, or more people in Muppets Inc., like Jerry Nelson, and they're also extremely famous from Sesame Street, which this is mostly, I'd say, a Sesame Street kind of based thing, this Dick Cavett show.
It definitely seems like the reason they were able to do this is because Sesame Street was so popular right now. Like, not only is there a lot of Sesame Street Muppet appearances, but it seems like this would not have happened had Sesame Street not been currently happening. Because other than that, they're like promoting the Frog Prince, which is like this weird little TV special that had aired like a year and a half or a half a year before.
Or doing skits that they had done 15 years ago. Or
Right.
whatever. But so yeah, they do a lot of songs from Sesame Street. Carol Spinney's on as Big Bird and then as himself. A lot of the interview, like jokey interview segments, are with Sesame Street characters like Grover, Bert and Ernie, Cookie Monster all pop up. But we also see a lot of other things that the team is doing at the time, like the Frog Prince, like you mentioned. But they also bring out the Boss Man puppet, which is a giant puppet that Jim and Kermit love, who is, I guess, Muppets Inc.'s giant puppet builder, made for Nancy Sinatra's Vegas show, which we just mentioned. And a few classic sketches like Visual Thinking comes back. And they do a custom at the beginning. And they do a few other things that they had been doing for years. Then aside from that, we watched a few more Flip Wilson appearances, including a monologue he did with Kermit. That's kind of seems like it's based on the Frog Prince, or maybe just happens to be the same idea as the Frog Prince. And like the build-up, whatnot puppet sketch where Flip helps two Muppets get ready for the show by putting faces on them, which I thought was the most successful version of it so far. I liked that quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. Like comparing that to like the Sesame Street version and the version of just like random characters on the TV like talk show appearances, I feel like that one they made it feel like part of the story. And so like Flip Wilson having to help these guys get ready by giving them eyes and eyebrows and all this stuff like worked much better.
It doesn't hurt that Frank Oz is extremely good at improv.
Yes.
So then for fun, here's some things real quick that happened in specifically November of 1971. Led Zeppelin 4 was released, also known as Zoso, which is the album that has Stairway to Heaven on it. Mariner 9 becomes the first spacecraft to enter Mars orbit. Steven Spielberg's directorial debut, the TV movie Duel, premieres on the ABC Movie of the Weekend, which we saw commercials for during Dick Cavett. Not for Duel, but for the show Movie of the Weekend.
Yeah, they were like, Movie of the Weekend, starring these 20 famous people that some of them sound familiar.
Man, I kind of miss the age of TV movies being on all the time. I feel like we were alive for the very end of that.
Well, because now it's just like Netflix originals and Lifetime movies and that kind of thing. Thing. I feel like the Lifetime Hallmark Channel movies are like as close as we get to that kind of thing.
Yeah, we lived through like the Stephen King miniseries version of The Shining, and that was like the last thing.
Oh man. So first, let's talk about the Flip Wilson show appearance, because it's a brief one, and we got a lot to talk about with Dick Cavett. But this took place on November 11th, 1971, and there's some things here that I feel like are important for the Muppets. Mostly, I'm referencing Dom DeLuise, because Dom DeLuise is here, being his wacky self, and we see him later on being the guy at the beginning of the Muppet movie who inspires Kermit to go be a star. They apparently, what we didn't see is on this episode, they also performed Java and a sketch with a drunk Muppet in a bar. But those sketches were cut from syndication, so they don't exist in the version we're able to watch. Because it seems like most of the things that end up on YouTube from these days are like the syndicated versions that aired dozens of times on TV. And so somebody was able to capture it, record it, put it up on the internet. But we did not get that version. So we just got the beginning part where Kermit is there talking to Diane Carroll and saying that Dom DeLuise used magic to turn Flip Wilson into Kermit the Frog. And then it turns out that was just a joke to get Diane Carroll to kiss Kermit.
Yeah, but Dom DeLuise does have a little book of magic.
He does. And he doesn't, like, he comes out like as if he believes he has done magic.
They wrote the skit, and then they didn't go back and look at the beginning of it to see that they had accidentally set it up to be real.
Yeah.
So I like that. I think Flip Wilson kind of has a Jimmy Dean type quality with the Muppets. I think he interacts with them well. He even sings "Consider Yourself" with them.
Yeah, so that's the next segment that we got to see, which is these two blank anything Muppets who just are they're wearing red sweaters. Flip is wearing a red sweater. It seems like the three of them are getting ready to go on and do a performance on the show, and it's quickly. They're like, hey, anything you need to do before you go out on stage? Are you ready? And they both realize that they don't have any eyes or other facial features. So Flip is helping them get ready by giving them eyes, first putting them on in the wrong position so that they can't see correctly, and then giving them noses, eyebrows, and hair. And I think what Sam was alluding to earlier of like why this is so successful is because it doesn't feel as rehearsed as the like Southern Colonel sketch that we've seen a dozen times at this point.
Yeah, Flip's having some fun with it, putting their faces on a little bit wrong on purpose, maybe, and then they both react to. It's Jim and Frank as the two different, and Frank Much better at going with it.
Oh yeah,
but
when he
both are okay.
puts the angry eyebrows on the one Muppet that Frank is controlling, and they both are sort of like prepared for like an angry Muppet moment of just like, well, you shouldn't do that. He gets really angry, and then he flips out. He's like, angry? You're saying I'm angry? And he's rushing around and just like, yes, it's Frank Oz. Which again, when we get to talking about the Dick Cavett show, the disparity between these men when they're underneath the puppets and when they are in front of the camera is the most night and day. But Frank Oz, we talked about this in the Muppet Movie episode. His improv skills as a Muppet performer are just amazing. And this is one of those ones that highlights it. And as a sketch that, like, I'm sure they do a version of on Sesame Street at some point because they do a lot of these things over and over again.
Right.
But this version was one that we had not seen before. So it was nice to get a new spin on something that we have seen.
Yeah, I think they suit Flip Wilson and the Muppets go together extremely well. I think.
I was kind of surprised looking up the Flip Wilson show that it went until 1974 and that the Muppets like were only on there until 1972. Because I was like, oh, like this felt like they would have just kept having them back every few months.
Right. It feels like strangely unceremonious that they're there because he's kind of just hanging out with them, which is a great mode for a Muppet host interaction. But it does feel like they would be a fixture of the show.
Yeah, I found that to be the case with a lot of Muppet TV appearances that I've like been gathering for our very, very long spreadsheet of appearances, is that they'll find sort of their groove on a show and they'll be there for a while and come back at least like once a year. And then they just like stop. And it's not like the show has stopped, but it's just like a producer on the show was like, yeah, I think we've had enough Muppets. So we talked a lot about Dick Cavett before, who the man is, what his show was. I did not realize when we were watching this that this was a live show that was aired at 11:30 at night.
Whoa.
Yeah. So this was a live talk show going out at 11:30 at night.
They were actually in the studio at 11:30 at night.
It seems that way because it says it was recorded live to tape. So they taped it to air it in reruns, but this was going out live at 11:30. So, yeah.
That's wild. Because nowadays they're filmed at like 5, right, or something.
Yeah,
like,
most
late
talk
night
shows
are not filmed late at night.
Yeah, they do them in the afternoons. That way they can edit in things and not have the technical difficulties that they experienced during this episode of the Dick Cavett show.
I got really worried when the Boss Man puppet was hitting his head against those lights. I thought Jerry Nelson was going to get squished.
There's also moments where they're like, hey, we have a clip from Timepiece to air. And then they are like, oh, it's actual film. We have to like work into a reel. Let's cut to this video clip first that we do have available because that's going to take a while. And it was just like, oh, yeah, no, that's something that if it wasn't live, they would have fixed in editing. The fact that this was live at 11:30 at night and they had so much crammed into this show, it did seem sort of chaotic. And there's a scan of like the script notes from that thing on Jim's Red Book, the blog, where you can see like they were crossing things out as they were going of like, we don't have time for this. Oh, let's do this. Oh, right, we can't do that. And so it makes sense to me that this is sort of chaotic because I think the Muppets are chaotic on their own. And then you imagine like unedited live Muppets for an hour and a half. That's a lot to wrangle.
Yeah, that's true. So Rolf is announced at the beginning of the episode, right?
Yeah, we get a full rundown of like Kermit the Frog, Bert and Ernie, Rolf, and special guest Cookie Monster, which I did like. Cookie Monster got a special guest credit for some reason.
Yeah, Cookie Monster kills it too. When he eats that microphone, I was cracking up.
Well, and that you mentioned that like Dick Cavett was competing with Johnny Carson, which makes more sense now that when Cookie Monster eats Dick Cavett's microphone, he says that like, the microphone's on the Carson show. Blech.
Yeah.
And it's very clearly one of those moments where that joke lands really well in the audience and with Dick Cavett. And so now understanding that there was a rivalry there, that makes more sense. But yeah, apparently Rolf had some sort of like dog philosopher monologue he was going to do.
Damn.
That just got cut for time. It was supposed to be like near the end, and so it just got squeezed out of the schedule.
They should have cut that really boring timepiece clip. It was too long.
Well, so let's go back.
Okay, anyway.
Yeah, let's go back to the beginning and go through this. One of the nice things about the version we watched, the Dick Cavett show, is that the commercials were still intact.
Yeah.
So we got to watch some wild, like 1970s commercials.
Like they weren't. None of them were Christmas themed, I don't think, but it was. A lot of them were like this holiday. give your wife this weird perfume.
And the best part is like these are the commercials that are sort of baked in because it was like live TV in the 70s. And so Dick Cavett is like aware of what he's about to show. And also when they come back, he's like, Cool Whip. It's great.
Yeah. That was wild.
Yeah.
And he had like the product and he would say that. I thought that was really weird. I guess we live in an age where commercials are random. Like you see a random YouTube ad. So there's no way to do that. But
yeah, it's like almost it's after the era of like Lucy and Desi doing a Marlboro commercial in the middle of a show or something like that. But it's just on the cusp where like they still are almost baked into the actual show because there's the one where they come back and he's like holding a diamond sugar box and then he shows several things for Thanksgiving that you can prepare with sugar. And I'm like, Dick, this is airing at 11:30 at night.
You fucked up.
After Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone has
thought the
already
same
eaten their
thing.
Thanksgiving dinner. But yeah, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, we get to see Jim Henson, Frank Oz, Jerry Nelson, Carol Spinney, Don Saleen, and Kermit Love, who Kermit Love like looks the most like a Muppet of any of those men.
He is a weird fella.
He is just like a Santa Claus with like glasses, like sunglasses, and just looks the most like a Muppet character stepped out into the real world.
So we didn't even start at the beginning. So the first thing he does, Thog comes out.
Oh
and
yeah,
hugs him.
he needs Dick Cavett needs some comfort.
Yes, because he's all alone on Thanksgiving. And that was that, pretty much. He says a weird joke. He says, the Alpo dog got in the yeast again. What the hell does that mean?
I guess like bread rises with yeast. So it's like a dog got some yeast, and so he grew into a thog.
Okay.
Is my thought, is like what that joke kind of meant. It seems like Dick Cavett's unscripted jokes aren't solid a lot of the times.
No, that was one thing I know. He's not he's still alive, so hopefully he doesn't listen to this. He's okay. He's not really like hilarious, and he kind of can ruin the flow of things a little bit, just like
Mike Douglas?
Just like Mike Douglas can, yeah.
We get more Thog later on in the show, but I'm wondering your feelings on Thog.
I don't like his big baby voice.
That's what I was assuming, because I was like, oh, he's another sweet Jerry Nelson character. Sam's going to hate this guy.
He's annoying. Yeah. His voice is just too, like, he looks like he sounds like he should be wearing a big giant diaper. And that's my least favorite kind of fictional character, is a giant guy, a giant baby who's wearing a big diaper, you know? Like Baby Huey.
Yeah.
You know, Baby Huey.
Yeah.
Hate that
Not a
shit.
fan of Baby Huey.
No, I hate Baby Huey. Thog, annoying. And that I mean, I don't think Jerry Nelson, I think Jerry Nelson seems terrified. So probably that didn't help.
Yeah, I felt bad for Jerry Nelson on this. Like this is jumping ahead a little bit, but we see him out there in person, sitting out there, and Dick Cavett like talks directly to him at one point, and the camera cuts to him, and he just says nothing. Like he clearly is not comfortable being on camera, maybe especially on live TV. And yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, Jerry Nelson is a man who is happy to be like behind a giant puppet or being these cute little frogs or whatever, but he does not like being in the spotlight.
He turns his entire body away from the camera. It's very sad.
But yeah, after the Thog bit where Thog comforts Dick Cavett, we get the old "I've grown accustomed to your face" sketch, which I feel like we haven't seen in a while. And this is actually the like second to last time we're gonna see it, like ever.
Does it happen on the Muppet Show?
No, it happens once more on the Tonight Show, I believe. I don't think it ever happens, at least in this kind of version, especially with Yorick on the Muppet Show. And I think the Tonight Show appearance, which happens in 1975, so we'll talk about that in a while, is the last time we get like the traditional Yorick, "I've grown accustomed to your face." And then in like 2011, Brian Henson did a version of it at like Bonnaroo for some reason.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that would play with the Bonnaroo
that
crowd.
sentence that I just said sounds fake, but it is real.
It didn't really play with this crowd either, so I think it's probably time to hang it up. People weren't losing their mind when Yorick eats the head anymore.
No, but it definitely, like afterwards, Jim references that like the first time we did that was back in 1956 on the old Steve Allen Tonight Show, and so it seems a little bit like it is the nostalgia act. They all kind of know that like they've moved beyond this. But for people who remember us from that, here's this.
Yeah. And one thing that you mentioned to me was that Kermit with sausage legs, which is possibly the last time you ever see Kermit with sausage legs.
Yeah, because I looked ahead at the Tonight Show clip, and the Tonight Show, I've grown accustomed to your face, is like normal Kermit with frog feet. So
Weird.
This one might be the last appearance of Sausage Leg Kermit, and I thought it was more interesting that not only is Sausage Leg Kermit back for this, like they brought back an older puppet, but also that regular Kermit is also on this episode. So we get Sausage Leg Kermit and we get regular Kermit in the same show, like not in the same shot at the same time, but I can't imagine that would ever happen again or before or since, like having both versions of the same character be in the same show.
And Jim goes into the changes that they've made to the puppet too, and he like talks about making him a frog a little bit. And I thought that was kind of a very interesting part too, because when Dick Cavett's talking to them, they are both answering. Jim and Kermit are both answering questions, like it doesn't like he's talking to one entity, and he says, "I can't really tell where you end and he begins," and Jim says, "Yes, I've noticed that," and that to me feels like that, like the cementing of Kermit as kind of like the Muppet. It's probably happened before that, but that's like Jim is Kermit, kind of. Like he has fully embraced that character and become one with him.
Right, he's doing a thing here that we'll end up seeing a lot on things like The Tonight Show and Arsenio Hall and so many other appearances where Jim Henson is being interviewed, he brings out Kermit, they're sitting there and they're both talking to the host. And that is something that's going to happen forever until Jim Henson's death pretty much. And yeah, this feels like we are fully in the era of Kermit is a frog, him and Jim Henson are the same. And I love when like Dick Cavett asks Kermit a question, Jim starts to answer, and Dick's like, "Oh, I was actually talking to him." Like, I was asking the frog.
That was a really good part. And Dick Cavett also is like, you can see, I see you put this Muppet on, and I'm like, oh, that's just a piece of fabric. But then when it's on, I instantly forget that it's just a piece of fabric. I thought that was cool too.
Yeah, there's a moment where Dick Cavett, like there's a sort of awkward exchange where Dick Cavett like wants to like put Manamana, like the puppet on, and then Jim Henson is like, "Do you want to?" And he's like, "Maybe I shouldn't." And he's like, Here you go, just put it on, it's fine. And he like puts it on and just like says like two little things and is like amazed at his own sort of like ability to bring this puppet to life in that moment where he's just like, "I did it."
That was that if you're gonna watch any of this, I feel like it gets it drags a little bit at the end, in my opinion, but I think that interview at the beginning is definitely worth watching.
It felt to me like this is like obviously one of those no-brainer thoughts, but like in the moment it was like, man, Jim Henson would be a great guest on this podcast.
Would he though? He's a little awkward.
The way he's talking about both Kermit and Cookie Monster are like verbatim conversations we've had on this podcast.
That's
of
true.
Like the evolution
That's
of
true.
Kermit, what changed about him and why, like his solidification into being a frog. And then later on he's talking about Cookie Monster and like, early on Cookie Monster used to eat anything and it took a while for him to be really into cookies. And I'm like,
God,
we know, Jim. We just talked about that.
He would make a great podcast about himself.
Yes,
and it
absolutely.
would be boring because whenever people ask him questions, he always hones in on the most boring technical aspects of everything.
He even did it again, the same thing he did on the Mike Douglas show like 6 years prior when they bring up his like experimental film work and they bring up Timepiece. He's like, the editing was really cool.
Let me tell you about this editing. But even he is kind of like, I was really into it at the time. So maybe somebody was like, Jim, this is boring. You can't talk about this anymore.
It feels like this trend that is happening now where like I feel like this started with things like the West Wing Weekly where somebody from the show does a rewatch podcast where they are talking about the show. Like you have like the Office ladies, you have now the guy who played Luke on Gilmore Girls is doing a Gilmore Girls rewatch podcast.
What the hell?
Yeah. So like
wow.
They're doing a lot of these now where like there are even like multiple people who were on The Office who have Office rewatch podcasts, like different ones. And so I feel like that's the sort of podcast Jim Henson would do, where he's like, I'm going to watch The Muppet Show and talk about the most boring small details of like, ooh, in season 2, we switched up the arm rods to be aluminum.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
We get another appearance of Manamana. And I don't know about you, but I like this one a lot because it seems like the most unhinged Jim Henson has ever been in performing Phenomena.
And it was a good Frank Oz kind of too, because they sound exactly like Miss Piggy. Like it's the Miss Piggy voice. But yeah, this was a great one because it seemed like back there they were battling each other to a certain degree, or like...
Yeah, it was another case of
like dives at the camera.
Yeah, there's a few moments where like Jim is like really rushing in at like full speed or like rushing out, and you can almost see the reaction on like the snouts faces of just like, oh, okay, this is what's happening this time. All right, I'm gonna try and keep up. Because from my understanding, the way Phenomena is done is that the two snoths, however they're pronounced, that's Frank Oz with two hands up.
With both of them. That's what
he's controlling
what it looked like
both
in
of
this
those.
one, at least.
And so that's just Frank Oz with his two hands up there trying to like be the straight guy in this role, which is usually like it varies on who's playing that. But this is Jim Henson just going off and like trying to like fuck with Frank Oz.
Yeah. That was, and you have to like, Jim would be like literally on top of Frank Oz, like leaning in between his two arms over his head.
Yeah, that's one like the Muppets on Puppets clip that we watched where they were showing the behind the scenes. I would like to see that behind the scenes of just like how Jim is like pushing Frank out of the way, or how they're doing this while still being professional and making sure that it looks good on camera.
I really want to see how far away he runs at that point when Phenomena goes really far away from the camera, or if they just have the camera set up so that it looks like he's really far away. Yeah,
because it's like at a certain point you feel like he would just not be visible if the camera angle was slightly wrong or something. And yeah, they did it in the right way, however they did it.
This one also isn't lip synced, which I assume they usually are. Like they are singing in this part. I don't think Phenomena probably. Well, I don't know. It just seemed more. Yes, it seemed more alive and unhinged, as you said.
Yeah, because it's like the little improv scat bits that he does, like are like not what you imagine when you think of the song Phenomena. Like if you go back and watch this version, you're going to feel like they did it wrong. They messed it up. And I think it is just that like chaotic 11:30 at night energy of just like, I'm going to mess with my fellow puppeteer here and just try and see if he can keep up. We get to see another appearance of Lothar and the Frackles from the Great Santa Claus Switch. They make a very, very brief appearance, which was one of those another moments where I'm like, they were pressed for time, because he basically like brings out Lothar and some Frackles pop up and they're like, all right, next thing, moving on.
Dick didn't seem very into the Frackles, frankly.
No, well, I think he was trying to rationalize them and ask questions about, like, so what is a Frackle? And Jim's just like, I don't know, man, they're Frackles. What do you want from me?
Yeah, what do they eat? Who cares? I don't know.
Yeah.
And then that's when Thog comes out again at the end and sings his dumb little song, which is notable to me because Dick Cavett helps him find his mark.
Yeah.
But he does a bad job, and Thog is right next to a staircase, and he's taking these steps closer and closer to the staircase that if he hits, he will fall over and probably hurt himself quite badly. So that was a very tense moment.
Yeah, it definitely seems like Jerry Nelson can't see very well inside of the Thog costume, and he is just creeping towards the stairs and the stage a little bit too much. So much like I watched this a couple times, and the second watching, my wife was in the room and she was like tense of like, oh God, is he gonna fall? And I was like, no, don't worry. I already watched this. He does not fall. It does look like he's gonna beef it at any moment. But yes, it is Thog comes out. He's very nervous. He doesn't want to do it, but they make him do it. And he sings the Three Little Fishies, the boop boop didn't want him to, and I
hate that.
I thought it was adorable.
No, I think Thog should burn in hell.
Well, I think we don't get too much of that kind of Thog too much more after this. We get Silent Thog a lot.
Yeah, he doesn't talk anymore. Yeah. Jim hated it too.
That feels like you might be projecting a little bit your hatred of Thog. I think some people find Thog adorable.
Yeah, like that's you projecting. Then it's Cookie Monster time.
Yeah, then we get the sweet Cookie Monster moment where they reference Cookie Monster having been there before.
Yeah.
Which I could not find what that was, where he had popped up, what he had done on there.
Yeah.
So, news to me that Cookie Monster had been on the Dick Cavett show before, but I guess it makes sense to promote Sesame Street.
It's funny because Dick does act like he knows Grover and Cookie Monster and Big Bird all from previous appearances, and he talks to them like, "Hey, what's up?
Yeah,
I met you before."
Yeah, his respect for them is higher than his respect for other Muppets.
Yeah, which is fair because the other Muppets are not. They were on one thing once.
Yeah,
they're nobody.
But yeah, Cookie Monster again showing off Frank Oz's improv skills.
Yeah,
killing it.
Yeah.
Like definitely, I think the best like holds up to today's sort of comedy Muppet standards that you could go watch just the Cookie Monster on Dick Cavett show clip and fully enjoy it.
Yeah, and they have like. It must be Frank Oz because when Dick talks to other Muppets, sometimes he'll like interrupt them, or like when it's a Jim Henson Muppet, they just don't have the same like repartee. Is that the word?
That's a word. Yeah, I think it's the word.
That he does with the Frank Oz Muppets. They have like a full conversation and get through their whole comedy routine without messing it up or anything like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's Frank Oz being able to like go with the flow just a little bit more than just a little bit more than Jim Henson is able to, because Jim Henson seems like the moment you step away from the script a little bit, he's just like dying to get back to that script, and it's just like, come on, let's get back. And Frank Oz is like, we'll get back to it, don't worry.
Then I think Big Bird comes out, right?
Yeah, after that we have Big Bird singing his V song.
That was good. I like that.
It's good. It's full like the early Big Bird that feels definitely different from current Big Bird. In certain ways, but it has a very good, fun, chaotic energy that I like.
He's getting close. And at the beginning, he's scared because it's Thanksgiving, and he doesn't walk down any dark alleys on Thanksgiving. And then Dick Cavett says that he was at the Golden Globes and that Colonel Sanders was in the audience of the Golden Globes, which I thought was interesting too, because Colonel Sanders was a real guy.
Yeah, just like so referencing Colonel Sanders as being in the audience sounds like a joke, but is not.
Yeah, it's like Ronald McDonald being in the audience, but no, he was a real strange man. Oh, but I texted you about this, but Big Bird reminds me of Pee Wee Herman at this point, kind of. He's got the same kind of like, he's an adult baby, I don't mind. He's an adult child, more like. And I like, just the way that they talk and the kind of jokes they make are very like, the innocent who knows a little bit more than he's letting on. Like, I liked this Big Bird a lot.
Which is sort of like how I think Carol Spinney feels as a human. Like when you see him talking on things, it feels like he is perfectly in line with that description of Big Bird that you just said. Yeah. But I can definitely see the Pee Wee Herman, like acting like a 4-year-old, but actually as smart as like a 12-year-old maybe.
Yeah, and also as smart as a 40-year-old man.
But yeah, after that is when they bring out Carol Spinney, Jerry Nelson, and Frank Oz to sit there with Jim Henson and Dick Cavett to have sort of a brief conversation that doesn't really go anywhere. And then they sing a song that, if you're going to cut something for time, you could have cut that.
I liked that song. I also read that the appearance was to promote the record, the Sesame Street Letter record. It just says that on Muppet Wiki. I don't know if that's true, but they do have a lot of songs from that record. So I think that probably they were hesitant to cut that part. But like going back to that interview, I thought one part that was funny was he asks, Dick Cavett says, "This is Big Bird. Do you have an actual person's name?" And then Carol Spinney says his name, Carol Spinney, which is barely an actual person's name.
Well, and like Dick Cavett doesn't say like, "It's nice to meet you, Carol." He's just like, "All right, we got that out of the way." Like, "What up, Big Bird?" This appearance by Carol Spinney, though, did inspire my upcoming Halloween costume that I am going to do, which is I'm going to be Carol Spinney, but like on set or mid-interview Carol Spinney, where he keeps Big Bird's legs on, but is not wearing the rest of the Big Bird costume. So I'm going to just like grow out my goatee a little bit and then I'm going to make Big Bird legs.
Yeah.
And maybe try to find like a little fake monitor or something I can strap to my chest. Because
are you going to get a page boy haircut, or are you going to find a wig?
I'm going to definitely aim for a wig on that one.
Okay,
I don't think I'm going to get a page boy haircut. I'm not going to commit that hard to the bit. But I feel like making the Big Bird legs is going to take enough work that I can kind of go easier on the hair part of the costume.
Sure.
But yeah, again, like I felt bad for Jerry Nelson and a little bit Frank Oz. Like those two clearly, it makes sense to me now that Carol Spinney is doing these game show appearances and other things
Yeah.
in this era because he was the one who was comfortable doing so.
Yeah, Frank is okay.
Frank
he
just
will-
like calls out Jim on shit that doesn't
Yeah.
need to be called out, and like that's one of those
That is
things
exactly what I was gonna say. I don't remember if there is a specific thing, but it does seem like when Jim starts to answer a question in a boring way, Frank will jump in with like a funny answer, like a way more snappy answer. And I think at one point, Dick says, "Do you two even know each other?" Or like they're being so mean and sniping at each other, and like he asks some personal question that Jim doesn't know the answer of in regards to Frank or something like that, and Dick just like picks up that maybe these two dudes are extremely different and only really have anything in common when they are being Bert and Ernie.
Yeah, at one point, Jim is listing off the characters that Frank Oz and Jerry Nelson perform, and he says that Frank Oz performs a character that Jerry Nelson actually performs, and Frank like takes great offense at this.
I don't perform that character.
Yeah, and he's like, "Are you even Jim Henson?" He's like, "You don't even know your Muppets, man. Get out of here."
Yeah. He's got a big brother energy, and you can kind of tell that he digs into Jim on purpose, and maybe he doesn't even realize he does it, but he just like he has a certain disregard for Jim's like humanity in a way, and in like a big brother way, in like a way that I know that I've treated my little brother before.
Which is
and
funny
not
because
meant
I'm
to.
pretty sure he's younger than Jim Henson
Okay.
at this point. I mean, always, I guess. He didn't ever
Yeah.
he didn't pass him.
Well,
he did pass him.
no,
I guess.
in a way,
You're
yeah.
right. But while they were both alive, yeah, he was definitely the younger one. So, you're absolutely right. He has that big brother energy where he's just like, "Hey, you said something wrong, dummy."
You idiot. I just wonder what
I need everybody to know that Jim Henson said something wrong.
And maybe it is that. Maybe it's like this man is the god who made all these Muppets, but I've been here almost the entire time.
And he keeps him in line. We then, one of those moments where I'm like, "Oh yeah, this was live, and they pulled that off. Good job, guys." Like while they're talking to Frank and Jerry, and they have this song going on, you don't notice that Carol Spinney slipped away, because after that, Oscar the Grouch pops up as Dick Cavett's about to throw to commercial, and he is like also sort of startled that Oscar was there. He didn't seem to be expecting him, and Oscar's very excited about the throwing to break, and Dick Cavett's like, "Oh, why is that?" He's like, "Yeah, we don't have commercials on my show." And he's like, "Oh, you like commercials?" And he's like, "Yeah, I love trash." And Dick Cavett's like, "Oh, well, we only have the best commercials here on my show."
Yeah.
But yeah, after they come back from that commercial break, we get Bert and Ernie, which I felt like was a sketch that worked really well. You get Ernie messing with Bert and basically convincing him that to work in Hollywood, to be on a famous talk show, you have to dress like this and you have to talk like this and you have to behave.
So Bert has a big top hat on and a cape and sunglasses, and he's like, "Hey, Dickie, baby." And while he's talking like that, Ernie is taking off his costume and acting like Bert is being an asshole. That was good.
Yeah. And later on, we'll be talking more about Bert because he's going to be our Muppet of the Week.
Okay.
But Bert does, I guess Frank Oz, does an amazing job of rolling with that too. And it just felt like that's one of those like Bert and Ernie at their best type of moments where
Totally.
their characters very clearly defined. You feel a little bit bad for Bert, but it's still funny at the same time. And then, yeah, we get Grover, who also seems to have been there before. And he does the like, "Hey, Dickie baby" thing, but like not
But it
as
works for Grover.
Yeah, Grover is like schmoozing people and is part of this apparently just a celebrity who gets to show up on things. But yeah, again, one of those things where they're cramming so much into this episode that it's kind of amazing that they had time for all of these things, but also is a bummer that they end up cutting Ralph.
Yeah.
Who would
have been nice to see him one more time.
We love. We do get to see Don Salim though, who is somebody we all love.
And that is that they do the put the different faces on the whatnot, which another like a custom, this thing that they've done a million times feels like it's running out of steam a little bit. That's an old puppet they don't really seem like they use anymore, and
even like Dick Cavett's like trying to move on from it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it also feels, I think we talked about this a little bit when we were talking about some of the later Ed Sullivan Show appearances, where it feels a bit more hollow than it did early on. Like it feels like they have done this so many times that they're also kind of done with it. And they're just like, yeah, I don't know. What do you want us to do? You want us to do the face changing guy? We can do that. We can fit that in. And so like no one's committing quite as hard to it as they did on the Mike Douglas show or on the Muppets on Puppets. So it's kind of like it's like the lowest tier performance of that sketch.
You know, it would have been fun if they had brought out some materials and Don had walked Dick through like building a puppet.
Oh,
that
yeah.
would have been a better thing to do.
That'd be great. Like make Dick make a puppet.
Yeah. That would have been cool. But this segment introduced a mystery that I will never not think about.
All right.
When Frank is performing one hand of this puppet and Jim is performing the other hand, Dick says, "Is it hard to do that?" And Frank says, "No, it's easy. There is one thing that's hard to do." And then Jim immediately interrupts him and starts to talk about something else, and they never loop back to that one thing that's hard to do.
I did not notice that.
I want to know what it is so bad.
Well, yeah, was he like trying to make a joke? Was he being serious?
No, he wasn't joking.
Like-
He was like looking at Jim and he was like, "Oh yeah, there's one thing that's hard to do." Like he's expecting Jim to be like, "Oh yeah," but then Jim just starts talking about something else.
Huh. I feel like we're going to get into sort of I think late 70s and 80s. The Muppets start to produce some more documentaries. Like we get certain things like Henson's Place or something like that. That's like called that we get these behind the scenes things where Frank Oz and them start to talk a little bit more about the process. And so maybe some of that will seep in and we'll get some more info, because so far this is sort of like the most like shop talk Muppets outside of the Muppets on Puppets that we've gotten.
Yeah. Frank Oz, if you're listening, tell me what the hard thing to do was, please.
Then we got the Boss Man puppet, which we talked about earlier, clearly meant to work against a black backdrop, because you have Jerry Nelson out there in like a solid black outfit holding these big black poles to control the Boss Man. But because
shaking
he's
his little booty.
Yeah, but he's against a pink backdrop and you just see him very clearly. And I'm like, oh, come on. You could have like given him
a blue outfit.
something, at least let him blend in a little bit more, because he's
Yeah.
not supposed to be seen during this.
Yeah. Then he walks into the lights and thunks the puppet's head against the lights, and I thought they were all going to die.
I thought they were going to catch on fire because those old lights were like incredibly hot.
Yeah.
And having that furry thing just very close to the hot lights, I was a little afraid of what was going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get Kermit Love, who comes out and talks about making the Boss Man puppets. And it seems like it's the most nonchalant thing. Like he's like, of course, yeah, I build giant puppets. What's weird about that? I don't.
Yeah. But he's dressed like Austin Powers and has a fake British accent and is an amazing man.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get some more Kermit Love material at some point. I know in the documentary Street Gang, there's a part where he's just like sitting behind somebody as they're talking, but he doesn't get to say anything in the documentary. Yeah. But he is like sort of one of those guys who is around for a lot of this stuff. And I'm hoping we get to hear more either about or from Kermit Love in the future.
I want to know if he and Don Celine, I want to know what their relationship was like.
Yeah,
if there's a rivalry there or something.
Well, Don Celine only lives a few more years. Don Celine dies in like 1978, I think.
Oh.
So I think there was sort of these like overlaps of Muppet builders that happen at times where there's like 5 or 6 like big Muppet makers that have been like the heads of these things. But yeah, Kermit Love and Don Celine definitely have some overlap. And I think Kermit Love was like he first helped out on the LaChoy Dragon, and then he helped with like Mr. Snuffleupagus and Big Bird. So he definitely was the like, I can make big things. But yes, he does just look like the coolest Austin Powers-y Santa Claus. Like, just imagine Austin Powers cool Santa Claus, and you then Google, then Google Kermit Love. You'll see exactly what we mean.
And you'll go, oh, that's him.
We then we got one of our least favorite things,
which used to be one of my most favorite things.
Yeah, they've sort of driven it into the ground. It's the visual thinking sketch that we saw all the way back in the Sam and Friends days. But the mistake they made yet again is they bring in Kermit to be the hipster character. Yeah. And we've talked about this before. It just doesn't work.
No, Kermit's too uptight. Even at this point, Kermit does not speak like that in other places where you see him. And he just doesn't sound like his voice doesn't sound like it would speak like that. This would be a great place to bring Rolf back. Rolf could do this.
Oh, yeah. Like, because Harry the Hipster and Rolf, pretty much the same character. Yeah, and I think that this is sort of like when we were talking about the end of this show starts to go downhill a little bit and like drag a little bit more than the early parts of it. I think between this and the clip from Timepiece and other experimental film things that Jim Henson shares, it definitely had me checking my watch a little bit to see how much of this was left because, oh boy, I've never seen Timepiece. And this is the most...
That's a lot of Timepiece.
This is like the most of Timepiece I've ever seen. And like the whole thing is only 9 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And so we got to see like 2-3 minutes of it. And if the whole thing is like this...
It is.
I can't imagine sitting through 9... Like, it's going to make 9 minutes feel like 2 hours.
Yeah, it's fine. I watched it in a museum that was playing it, and I just stood and watched the whole thing. It's fine. It has like a nice rhythm to it. It doesn't work as a clip. I mean, it has like a little narrative arc where he's like waking up and getting old and dying and stuff. So it just doesn't... It's good. I liked it when I watched it.
Okay.
This was boring. It's pointless to watch this much of that. They might as well have just shown the whole 9 minutes if they were going to do anything.
Yeah, they removed all the context from it and was just like, here's a short clip from this thing called Timepiece. And it's just super fast editing with like a young Jim Henson staring at like a belly dancing lady. And then he's flying and they shoot him out of the sky and then he turns into a clock.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay. And in the middle of that, he's also painting an elephant for some reason.
Painting it pink. I don't remember why he does that. I think that goes somewhere too. Did he win an Academy Award for this, or was nominated at least?
He's at least nominated. There was this and The Cube, I think is the other one that he made. And I think he was at least nominated for one of those.
I think that I got so bored during this part that I don't even remember what happens at the end.
My notes were also sort of scattered. Like up until this point, they were very like in order, my reactions, all this stuff. And then my notes at this point say glowworm.
Oh, I didn't even remember that they did glowworm.
Yeah, glowworm happens. And then that's it.
How
like,
is it?
I remember it being okay. But again, I think also at this point, I was sort of like winding down as well. And I think it's... I have no problem like watching this whole thing, like, but what you said earlier about it dragging towards the end, definitely true. I am happy we watched this whole thing and got to like sit and watch this because so many of these TV appearances from back then are just a short 5-minute piece, or we only get to see a short clip from a longer thing. And so being able to watch this full hour and a half long appearance gives so much more context to what they were up to, how the Muppets were viewed in the public, seeing people like Dick Cavett who have serious conversations with Groucho Marx and Salvador Dali and all these people have a serious conversation like about puppetry with Jim Henson. Like,
yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where they have them back a time or two after this for things, but they don't ever do like another full Jim Henson special essentially on the Dick Cavett show.
Yeah, and it's like you might as well watch this instead of the Mike Douglas show too, because there aren't offensive comedians hitting on 12-year-olds or weird musical acts every 4 seconds. Even though that's fun, like that's fun in its own way, but this is definitely a great catching up. If you don't want to watch everything we've watched, this is a good place to start.
Yeah, it's like
before the Muppet Show starts.
Yeah, it's like a great refresher of like who are the Muppets? Who have they been up until now? Like you get a taste of all of it in this. Well, we mentioned him earlier, but this week's Muppet of the Week is Bert. Don't worry, Ernie will be the Muppet of the Week in just a couple weeks.
I was surprised he didn't do them as a duo.
I
thought
thought about it.
Each have their own thing going on, huh?
Yeah, and I thought about it and then realized that like they have a lot going on when you've been on TV for 50 years. You have a lot of backstory and a lot of interesting things. Some of my information about Bert will overlap, obviously, with Ernie. So we'll get some more of that. But yeah, in a couple of weeks, we'll talk about Ernie in some more detail. For this week, though, we got Bert. He is, you know Bert. He's the tall-headed, yellow, unibrowed, striped-shirted man.
Yeah, he is a man.
He's Ernie's best friend and roommate. He has changed very little since his initial appearances.
Even less than Ernie. Ernie's voice changes. Bert's always just exactly the same, basically.
Yeah, and there's a Muppet wiki page that's like Bert through the years, and you can scroll through it, and you can read their descriptions of how he has changed. And yes, if you're looking for it, you can see that his head got slightly more round or slightly more squashed in the season. But you could like line up the 20 different versions of Bert that have existed, and no one's going to be like, oh, clearly these are drastically different.
Bert.
Yeah. I say that. There are definitely people who could do that. I am not one of them. Like, most of these Berts look identical to me. Some things that I think a lot of people know about Bert is he likes pigeons. He likes to study pigeons. He has a pet pigeon named Bernice, who is most often played by a real live pigeon on the set of Sesame Street, like one of the rare animals that is always like a real animal and not a Muppet version of an animal. He also collects paper clips and bottle caps. And apparently it's canon that he has 368 bottle caps in his collection, which I feel like if you've been doing this for 50 years, though.
Well, maybe he collects a specific brand of bottle cap,
Ooh.
And he has them all.
Also, a thing that I don't think I necessarily knew about Bert, but apparently is a character trait, is that he likes to eat oatmeal. And I think it's just one of those things that they try to add some boring traits to Bert.
Boring guy.
It's like he likes oatmeal, pigeons, paper clips, bottle caps.
Yeah, but now I'm old enough that you're saying some of that stuff, and I'm like, oatmeal's, I could eat a bowl of oatmeal. I'm collecting bottle caps. I would love to see someone's bottle cap collection.
Sam, full confession, I had oatmeal this morning before we started the podcast.
God. Yeah, you of the two of us, you are the Bert.
I want to argue that, but I don't think I can.
I had Cinnamon Toast Crunch, so.
All right. Bert is played by Frank Oz and was consistently from 1969 through 1997. And occasionally after that, up until 2006, like just occasional appearances. We talked about this sort of with like Cookie Monster and other Frank Oz puppets that he would occasionally put the puppet back on for certain things. But since 1997, Eric Jacobson has been the main Bert performer. And we've also talked about him before because he has taken over most, if not like almost all of the Frank Oz roles since the mid-90s.
Sometimes you just have that Frank Oz voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's one of those things that just works really well. I got into this hole of watching Sesame Street clips while I was preparing my notes yesterday. And one of the things I found was a Star Wars parody clip, like a Cookie Monster Masterpiece Theater kind of thing. And there's a section in there where they go to see like a Yoda, but Yoda is played by Grover. And there was this weird thing where I was like, wait, those were both Frank Oz and the voice is very similar already. So you have Grover doing a Yoda impression. And so you have a man, Eric Jacobson, who's already pretending to do a Frank Oz voice, pretending to do another Frank Oz voice. And there was just too many layers happening that I appreciated, but was like, this is getting weirdly meta. Yeah. And there's even a moment in there where Cookie Monster like calls it out, where he's like, where have I like seen you before? Or where have I heard you before? Or something like that. But yeah, Bert's first appearance was on Sesame Street. He is one of the few Muppets to have appeared in the like pilot and the announcement show of like, hey, Sesame Street's coming up. You should get excited. Yeah. So he has been there with Ernie from the very beginning. These were based on some Jim Henson designs. Basically, he drew like a vertical oval, added a unibrow to it, and then he drew a horizontal oval and added some eyes and nose to it. And it's like, that's Bert and Ernie.
Yeah, and then somebody gave him $4 million.
And there's a story in both the Street Gang book and elsewhere that initially they were trying to do the opposite puppets. Like Frank Oz picked up Ernie and Jim Henson picked up Bert, and they were trying to like do that, and it just wasn't clicking. Like they couldn't get it to work well, and they switched, and they were like, aha, nailed it.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. People incorrectly claim in different trivia things and those types of Twitter accounts that are just like, did you know this is true? And it's not. They claim that Bert and Ernie are named after the characters of Bert and Ernie in It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah. Bert, I believe, is the cop and Ernie is the cab driver, or that's
Something
the other way
like
around. This isn't true. Like, it just isn't. Even though it seems like Sesame Workshop has like stoked this fire at times with like tweeting out things that are similar, or like asking in like a fan quiz, like, who are they named after? But yeah, as far as I can tell, early on, the Henson Company was like, nope, just a coincidence. I found a quote from 1992 where Jerry Jewell said, "I was not present at the naming, but I was always positive it was incorrect. Despite his many talents, Jim had no memory for details like this. He knew the movie, of course, but would not have remembered the cop and the cab driver."
Though they say their names in the movie, but there's no reason to name those characters after to do that.
No. Jerry Jewell went on to say, "John Stone assured me that Ernie and Bert were named one day when he and Jim were studying the prototype puppets. They decided that one of them looked like Ernie and the other one looked like Bert. There's also the like ever continuing conversation of, are Bert and Ernie gay? A lot of people through the years have talked about that possibility. You have these two guys who like share a bedroom. They live together. They've lived together for 50 years. People look at them and they're like, oh, what a lovely like old gay couple. And
Bert hangs out in the bathroom while Ernie's taking a bath.
yeah, I think it's one of those things where there's obviously no blatant laid out thing that you can look at and say, yep, that's the moment they confirmed Bert and Ernie were gay. And if anything, through the years, Sesame Street has gone out of its way to deny these claims. For a long time, the line that I found quoted from many puppeteers and from like CEOs of Sesame Workshop was like, they're just puppets. They end at the waist. Like, of just basically like, stop talking about their romantic life. They're just puppets.
Yeah, well, other Muppets are very horny, so that doesn't really work.
Have you met Gonzo? But in 2018, they put out a big statement that I know got a lot of press, where they said, like, once and for all, they're not gay, they're puppets. Like, just like laid it out of like, they were created to be friends, they're not gay. And it turns out like now, the current Sesame Workshop president actually said, this was in the 50 Years of Sunny Days special that they had on ABC a couple weeks ago, that she regrets that statement. And she says, her quote is, I think by saying that, it almost sounded like it would be something wrong if they were gay. If you relate to these characters as gay, that's fine. That's what makes Sesame so special. If you relate to them as not, that's fine. But that denial, if you will, I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, doesn't seem like there's any reason to take that stance about it.
Yeah. And like through the years, I used to work at Hot Topic years ago. I remember Hot Topic had like a pride section where it was like a bunch of rainbow stuff. And like at that time, we would get like boxes and boxes of band t-shirts that were like rainbow themed, and like all these things that like didn't normally sell rainbow themed products, we would get rainbow themed products. And I remember getting a Bert and Ernie like official Sesame product t-shirt that had Bert and Ernie on it and a rainbow behind them. And they sent us this like during Pride Month to sell at Hot Topic. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, and at the very like they're cashing in on it, which is maybe not the coolest thing. Right.
And then that's the thing is like, if they don't want to like confirm or deny it, whatever, that's fine. Yeah. They can sell that merch, do whatever. But when they like sell this merch and then also hardline deny that this is true, I'm like, okay, so what are you doing here?
They're just trying to have it all different ways.
Yeah.
I feel like that was maybe there from the beginning of the characters, personally. I don't know.
What lends credence to that idea, too, is that there was an ex-writer for Sesame Street who was gay and who said he always wrote them as if they were a gay couple. And that is what actually led to Sesame putting out that really like staunch defense, was because people saw his statement saying, I'm a former writer, I wrote them as gay, as like confirmation that Sesame Street said these Muppets were gay. Yeah. And so Sesame Street felt like they had to come out and denounce what this guy said. Yeah. And so it's like, come on. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's a whole thing that is not necessarily over or resolved, but it's it is something that people talk about.
And mostly Sesame Street company aren't doing themselves any favors, it seems like.
They lean into it when it will make them money, and then lean away if it becomes controversial. So Bert has, like a lot of Sesame Street Muppets, an extended family that he references quite a bit.
Does he have a mom that's him in a wig?
Yep. And she's actually a fairly new character, which I didn't realize when I was falling down that rabbit hole of Sesame Street videos. There is a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air parody where like Bert and Ernie are singing about like how they got to Sesame Street and who they are. And
what the heck?
So there's in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where it's like, you're moving with your auntie and uncle to Bel-Air, where like the mom character is on screen. Like there's a Bert mom on screen doing that line. Oh, but that's like apparently the first time we've seen Bert's mom.
That's weird. Okay.
But
does it say how they met each other in that song?
It does imply that Bert just like was going to live on Sesame Street. It sort of implies that he like moved from like one area of Sesame Street to another, but didn't get out much maybe, because he like goes over by Mr. Hooper's store and Ernie's just there like playing checkers by himself. And Bert's like, can I sit here? And he's like, sure, we're friends now.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. But Bert also has a twin brother. Want to guess his name?
Turb.
That's pretty good. But no, it's Bart.
Okay. Yeah. That was my next guess, actually.
Bart has a son named Brad. So Bert has a
Okay.
little nephew who just looks like a shrunken down Bert.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. And
I love a little nephew.
I know that at least his little nephew Brad is featured at the... You just like the idea of a baby named Brad?
I just like the name his little nephew Brad. That's a good thing. That's a good descriptor of someone.
But little Brad is featured as one of the Muppets at the end of the Muppet movie because they just like crammed every Muppet
he's
they
that
possibly
old.
had
Yeah.
into that end scene where they're all singing Rainbow Connection. But yeah, Brad has been around for a while.
Oh my God, he's adorable.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But Bart was in the early days of Sesame Street. He was Bert's twin brother who shows up and was like a traveling salesman.
Uh-huh.
But now the newer version of Bart is hipster Bert.
I'm seeing him. I don't like it. I don't like what I'm seeing.
I don't like seeing myself as a Muppet.
Yeah. Okay. Great point. He's wearing your exact outfit that I've seen you wear.
Yeah, the red flannel shirt. He's got a beard. He's got
Uh-huh.
my glasses.
A really
Like-
colorful watch like that you would probably really like if you saw it. Oh, he has a very similar hair to you. Oh my God.
Dude, I just got to grow out my unibrow, and I'm
Uh-huh.
pretty much Bart. Yeah, I didn't love that realization. Like we talked earlier about how I am the Bert of us two, but if I'm really a Muppet, I'm pretty sure I'm just Bart. It's also been referenced that they have an uncle named Bart that Bart is named after. But Uncle Bart apparently gave Bert his very first paperclip, so that's what started that collection. And then they have more extended family that they reference either in books or on Sesame Street of like a bunch of uncles and aunts and all this stuff who are sort of less important. But they also have a cousin Bernita, or actually it's Bertina, who is a surfer, which is
Oh, cool.
yeah, her main character trait I could find was surfer. But she's only appeared like once on actual Sesame Street. But yeah, that's I like sometimes when these are just like normal, not really sad family stories, because we have the ones like Sam Eagle where it's just like, ooh, I'm sorry, Sam, you're living a rough life. But Bert seems
Yeah,
fine.
but-
He's got like a brother that he's not really close with, but
Sesame Street Muppets can't have two sad lives, I feel like.
I wonder who's the saddest Sesame Street Muppet?
Well, the Count, he's damned to roam the earth for all eternity, compulsively counting and assumedly drinking blood.
I think you found it. The most cursed, sad Sesame Street Muppet. I thought it might be Snuffleupagus because he just seems kind of sad. And there is a there was
He's got a whole family though, I think, doesn't he?
well, so there was a an episode that did not air that they made back in like the 70s or 80s where Snuffleupagus' family gets divorced. His parents get divorced,
no.
and he has to like
Yeah.
go stay with his mom for a weekend. And his dad is
Yeah.
like, "No, I don't live here anymore. You guys, this is your guys' home." And they thought that kids couldn't handle that at the time, so they didn't end up actually airing it. But they show clips from it in the 50 Years of Sunny Days special.
That's too sad because he already is very sad.
Yeah, he's already a sad character, and to add a level of sadness to him seems a little unnecessary. But it's one of those where you watch Sesame Street handle the tough subjects, and they do a great job of handling it. But they just decided at that point that it was maybe a little too sad. But yeah, what are your feelings on Bert?
I love Bert. I love Bert and Ernie. I think any Jim Henson Frank Oz duo is like the perfect Muppet thing, basically. Yeah, I love cranky characters. I like Donald Duck, Daffy Duck. Usually ducks are always cranky, and Bert falls into that kind of same thing for me.
I can
like
see that
when-
voice
yeah,
coming
he
out of
can
a
get all-
duck.
Yeah, he can get all grumped up, but at the end of the day, he's got a heart of gold. He loves Ernie. That's a powerful character combo.
Yeah, no.
What do you think about him? You probably love him because you're him.
It's just like looking into a mirror. Yeah, no, I am also a big fan of Bert, and I think Ernie gets a lot of the shine. Like people look at them and they're like, "Oh, clearly Ernie's the fun-loving party guy. He's my favorite." But I think, Bert, his jokes get to land a little more because you don't expect them
Totally.
as much. He's like that guy who like chooses when he talks very wisely.
He's got great zingers.
Yeah. So big fan of Bert.
I really like that they like you're talking about his hobbies. I really like that he and Bert both have like these really fleshed out like interests. That to me makes them very relatable, I guess. Maybe I am the exact age that they are supposed to be or something like that, but they seem like they have a nice life.
Yeah, they definitely are not the, like, Big Bird is like this clearly like a 4-year-old or whatever like that. Elmo's like a 2-year-old. You have these guys who just like live in a basement apartment on Sesame Street, and they definitely seem to be at least 30.
Bert, 5-star Muppet to me.
Oh yeah, we ranking. We
Sometimes we forget.
We do forget. I feel like if we're just keeping it out of 5, I feel weird giving like everything a 5 because I do love so many of these early Jim Henson.
Okay, you
Frank
can give them up
Oz.
to 60 like you've done before. I'll stick to 1 to 5, and you can go up to 60.
Let's see. Bert out of 60 gets a solid 52.
That's a great score.
But what non-Muppet things have you been enjoying this week, Sam?
This week I just was walking around outside a lot and not watching a lot of stuff, but I did watch Logan Lucky again. We just recently watched, I didn't talk about this last week, right?
Nope.
No. We just recently watched all the Ocean's movies, and Steven Soderbergh directed those, but he also directed Logan Lucky, which is basically like a spiritual Ocean's movie because it's also about a heist, but instead of like slick Las Vegas guys, they are like West Virginia, just people, kind of normal people, but also a little bit like hillbilly. Some of them are very hillbilly-ish, and they have to rob NASCAR basically race using like homemade stuff instead of like really slick computer stuff. They like have their construction equipment, and they hatch this plan to rob NASCAR, and it has like undertones of very like social justice, like the rich eat the poor kind of stuff, and it's really good. I'd seen it before, but I really liked it when I saw it, and now I like it even more after seeing all the Ocean's movies because it's kind of like the flip side of that, and shows a little bit more of the aftermath of like what would happen after you did a big heist like this. And it has Daniel Craig doing a Southern accent like he will do for Knives Out, so it's kind of like a proto Knives Out too.
I have never seen this movie.
It's really good. I'd highly recommend it. It's very funny.
I'm looking at the cast list, and it has very good people in it. So I feel like
Adam Driver is like the best Adam Driver performance. He did it in the middle of doing all the Star Wars movies that he did, and it's so different. He's got like the Southern twangy accent, but
he's also very good in Inside Llewyn Davis. I feel like when he just pops up in random places, I'm a big fan of Adam Driver's like kooky characters he gets to play.
Man, that part in Inside Llewyn Davis is so funny when they sing that stupid song.
Well, just especially thinking about like it's Poe and Kylo Ren, and then Justin Timberlake's here.
Yeah. Oh, very weird. That's a good movie too.
Yeah.
But yeah, Logan Lucky, like that one. How about you?
Well, apparently I can only watch content with Frank Oz in it. Like I think it's my apparently new rule because like I was watching all the Star Wars stuff, so Frank Oz obviously Yoda in those, and then I thought I was getting away from it, and I watched Blues Brothers this week.
Yeah,
because I got the
just checks him out of prison. And Blues Brothers stuff.
I got the 4K Blues Brothers restoration that came out, and it looks great. And then I'm watching it, and I'm realizing right at the beginning, I'm like, well, Frank Oz is about to show up, and he shows up and he checks Jake out of prison. And then there's also a moment later on, right before the car crashes into the mall, where they cut into the toy store, and there's a guy holding a Grover doll, and he says like, "Do you have Miss Piggy?" And then the car crashes in. And I'm like, oh, so there's even more Frank Oz in this than I realized. Something about Blues Brothers feels Muppety to me. Like the vibe of it, the humor of it. Like Muppets could show up in that movie and I wouldn't be surprised.
I think it kind of is a takeoff of the same movies that the Muppet movie is. It's like a goofy road movie, and there were tons of those in the 70s.
Well, and there's just so many people in it too that like end up interacting with Muppets either on like Saturday Night Live or just like you have people who feel like even if they don't end up like John Candy, I don't believe it ends up doing anything with the Muppets necessarily, but like clearly he's
a human Muppet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way he couldn't have done something great with the Muppets. So yeah,
it also ends with everything exploding and crashing and stuff. Just like the Muppets do.
Yeah. I don't know enough about the Blues Brothers lore to like know if anyone like there's like cross-pollination of people who worked on Blues Brothers potentially working on Muppet stuff, but it does feel like there is some possibility there. 'Cause you have like the musical numbers that break out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I just feel like it has a Muppet-ness to it. I think at some point Cab Calloway even does a performance with the Muppets on Sesame Street, where he sings like the Heidi, Heidi, Heidi Ho that he sings in Blues Brothers. And he sings that on Sesame Street with like the Count and the two-headed monster and everything. And so I'm like, you could just like insert that Sesame Street performance into Blues Brothers, and then you get your Muppets.
He does indeed. You are correct. Do that on Sesame Street.
But I was also like, when I was watching it and they're like getting the band together, and you have like people like Donald Duck Dunn, who's this like weird giant 70s Afro man who just says the most offhand things. I'm just like, oh, he looks exactly like that other member of the Electric Mayhem whose name I can never remember.
Oh, Lips.
Lips is his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
The trumpet player?
Yeah.
The very least member of the Electric Mayhem?
Yeah, the one who's not there all the time.
He doesn't get to be in the Muppet movie?
Yeah, he shows up occasionally and you're like, wait, where did this guy come from?
Cab Calloway sung Minnie the Moocher in Sesame Street because he was popular from Blues Brothers.
Wild.
It was the next year, I think.
Oh, okay.
So, there you go.
Yeah. But yeah, I watched that. Also, I started getting into Mass Effect this week.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've never played any of those games, but I have
Neither
friends
have I.
who are like, this is the best game. This is my favorite game of all time. It's amazing. And so they just released the Legendary Trilogy Edition, which is like the remastered 4K, like whatever version of these super old games. And yeah, I don't know. I'm only like an hour in, but it seems like extremely my shit.
Yeah. It's hard to play those kind of games when you're our age, I feel like, because
you
need to be able to stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning, or like not have somebody else who wants to watch the TV that you were playing on.
Yeah, no, like I'm still not finished with Red Dead Redemption 2 because I basically play it like an hour at a time. I sit down, I play for an hour, I do one mission, I'm like, all right, time to make dinner. Or time to walk the dog.
Laundry now, yeah.
Yeah. No, finishing a video game after age 30 is a big accomplishment. The fact that I finished Spider-Man Miles Morales is, I deserve a medal.
Oh, yeah. That's what, with the Spider-Man that's a spinoff of. I can't believe I finished that.
Yeah, that one's even longer, and I finished that.
I had to power through it, though.
Basically, in summation, we are slightly older Bert and Ernie who can't finish video games. But that does it for this week. Next week, we are going to be watching the next TV special, The Muppet Musicians of Bremen, as well as another Carol Spinney game show appearance. This time it's a brief appearance on What's My Line. But Muppet Musicians of Bremen will be the real star of next week's conversation. You can watch that, I believe, on both YouTube and archive.org. Archive.org's quality is much, much better. Most of the time. It's like a Laserdisc rip where I feel like the YouTube version is filmed with a potato off of a VHS. It looks terrible. So I would recommend watching it on archive.org. We want to thank our friend Tuna for creating the music for this podcast and Cassie Wilson for singing our theme song. If you want to follow this podcast on Twitter, where we tweet out fun things throughout the week and also the playlist for where you can watch the things that we're going to watch, you can do that at CommitmentPod. You can also email us your thoughts about any specific Muppets, which is mail@commitment.com if you want to do that. And you can follow me at Matthew Gatos.
And I'm at Slam Schultz.
And as always, keep believing.
Keep pretending.